Good morning. Are we live? Okay. Good morning. We're here at Nook this morning with Elizabeth Adams, child psychologist, and today we're continuing our live Q&A series, and our theme today is about your children's social and emotional development and well-being. So first, why don't you introduce yourself and where your practice is and what you do and where people can find you online?
Sure. I'm Elizabeth Adams, and I'm a child psychologist. I have a practice in Northwest DC that's part of the River Reach Clinic, which is located inside of the River School. And I also do parent coaching through a practice called Personalized Parenting, where parents can get Skype or phone-based coaching to deal with day-to-day challenges regarding raising their children that might not be appropriate for therapy, but I also see kids traditionally in my therapy practice as well.
And where can we find you online?
You can go to personalizedparenting.org.
Great. So we picked out some really great questions that we're going to run through. The first one, I think, is something that everyone can empathize with. My toddler has trouble sharing. And although I realize this is not uncommon, it leads to a lot of friction and showdowns whenever we're in the company of other kids, at play dates, on the playground, etc. Is this just a phase that will pass? How can I manage the behavior or the situation so that we can go into social situations without conflict?
Okay. That is
sharing. So hard.
Really hard. And part of that is it is a phase, and it is developmental. So it's very typical for kids to struggle with being able to share. And
what's the typical, when can you consider it a phase in terms of age?
So, I mean, a 4-year-old could struggle. That is really typical. When kids are around a year old, they start to differentiate themselves from their parents. So they go from this oneness with their parents to I'm my own person.
Right.
And it's often why developmentally a lot of kids' one of their first phrases is mine, or it's mine.
Right.
And that's a good sign. It's that they're developing their own personhood, that they understand that things belong to them.
Right.
And that's a really intense feeling for kids. Mm-hmm. And so part of this is understanding that it's very normal.
Yeah.
Kids, to develop the ability to really be able to share from a genuine place of, I want you to have this because you really want it. It's hard for adults. But that requires empathy. And a lot of researchers say that true empathy, where you can really perspective take fully, doesn't happen until 5. But we can shape kids and give them feedback and give them social scripts and help them to learn that there is something in it if they share. And so the way that we want to do this, the question said, how do we avoid conflict? And part of it is that we don't want to. We want to give kids the experience to practice this.
Right.
And so having kids get into those moments of, I want that, that's mine, is really important. So that they can then develop the skill to learn how to share.
Right.
And so there's the experiential piece, and then there's direct teaching that you can do. So there's awesome books about sharing, like the Llama series has a book about sharing. Mo Williams has a book about sharing. So I think reading books like that with the kids is really helpful. And you can also play games. Yeah. So if you have a 2-year-old, you might give them some blocks and say, give one to everyone in the room. And then as they're giving them to the friends in the room, and you can start with just yourself, give one to mommy, give one to daddy, give one to your sister, then you can say, great sharing. So you're labeling it, and you're giving them feedback on, nice job sharing your toys, now we can all play together. So giving them an opportunity to practice. Modeling, so sharing with your kids. Saying, come sit next to me and have some of my popcorn. Share this with me. You can also share yourself. So if you have 2 kids, putting one kid.
Aren't we already doing enough of that?
Yes, all the time. But it's really hard because kids feel that very intensely.
Yeah.
And I think you can also label the feeling for them, saying it's really hard to share,
right.
or we can all do this together. So giving them in the moment, rather than reacting to the strong emotion in a negative way and trying to shut that down, helping them through it.
At that young age, though, emphasizing that, oh, it's really hard to share. Like, is that actually helpful, or is it just reinforcing their like angst about sharing?
No, because I think it's validating.
Right.
I think just like for adults, if somebody tells you, oh, don't worry about that, that's seldom helpful.
Right.
If you are worried about it.
Right.
And if you're feeling an emotion really intensely, for us to say,
right,
well, you know, why can't you do this? It's not a big deal. Is it really helpful? It's the first step. It's saying it's really hard to share, but then helping them do it. So giving kids a specific strategy of what to do. So you can say, stand next to your friend and wait until they're done using it.
Right.
Time sharing is a great tactic. So 2 minutes is about right for really young kids. So you can say, oh, it looks like you really want to play with that toy now.
Right.
Ask your friend if you can have a turn.
The 2 minutes, this is like a random aside, but someone told me kids can't, 2 minutes means nothing to them. And a friend of mine has an actual, those sand, what do you call it? Sand timer? Sand timer. Because it's like the only visual way they know, and it's 2 minutes. And you flip it over, and they understand when they flip it over. Their turn's over.
I mean, you can absolutely, you can be that concrete if a child really needs that, but it's sort of getting them used to the idea that they have to wait.
Right.
And delayed gratification is a really important skill for kids too to develop, but it's hard.
Yeah.
And they need that practice. So there's like handling it in the moment. If the child is having a really hard time, being able to sit with them while they're waiting and saying, you're doing a really nice job waiting your turn. Soon you're going to have a turn to play with it. Luckily for kids attention span is pretty short. And so usually they move on from one toy to another. So it will be their turn likely. So they'll have the experience of being there.
I mean, this question touches a nerve for me because when you go to a playground and your kid is in that stage where it's like a battle and there are so many other kids in there and there are shared toys, like literal sandbox at the playground. What are some like key strategies for like preempting that kind of behavior or coaching them before you even get to the playground or the sandbox?
Well, one of the things that's really helpful, and this is good for play dates too, because sometimes if a friend comes over to the child's house, kids usually do better when they go to somebody else's house, right? Because it's new toys, everything's really novel, they're really interested. If you have a play date, having the child bring their toy, a few of their toys, because then they'll understand the concept of sharing, and the novel toy that the child is bringing to the play date will also be exciting for the child whose house it is. So they'll be interested in their toys, and then they're more likely to share the toys that are there. So I think having them bring something that's there to the playground could be helpful. And I also think, depending on the child's age, again, like there's the playing the games where you're having them practice it out of the context of in the moment when the emotions are really strong. So that's the idea of playing the games, reading the books and talking to them about the feelings, but nothing is going to replace the in the moment experience. And so I think letting that kind of play out, if your child's working on that a little bit, is actually good. If things start to go south and you have to step in, I think giving the language. So saying, you really want to play with that bucket. It looks like this friend is playing with that. You know, let's make a sandcastle over here and wait. And see if you can sort of distract them. Or you can say, why don't you ask that friend if you can have a turn? And you can give them the word. So you can say, can I have a turn with the shovel? And so you're giving them the script to practice it. And, you know, we can't control how other kids might react. So you might have to help them through that. But it's all good. It's the experience of being able to learn that. It might not go the way they want it to, but how they can work through that.
Okay. Super helpful. Second question is, my 2-year-old is very social, but isn't able to stand up for herself in social settings. How can I help her find her voice among her peers without encouraging her to misbehave or be aggressive? So kind of on the other side.
Side of it. I think that, again, temperamentally, there are some kids who are a bit more hesitant. And part of this, exactly, on the other side of the spectrum, where we want to help kids have the language around sharing, we also want kids to have the language around self-advocacy. So I also think we can do a lot by modeling. So sometimes you'll see a child crawling on their parent, they're accidentally choking them, and the parent's like just kind of letting it happen.
Yeah.
It's okay to say to your child, like, that hurts me a little bit. Like, modeling self-advocacy, I think is important. Most kids, from their gut reaction, they'll let us know when they don't like something. And it's typically not with words developmentally. Yeah. They might just yell.
Right.
But that's great, because that's a good cue to us about how they're feeling.
Oh, yeah.
So you can then give them the language and say, you really didn't like that. That hurt your feelings when they said that. Right. And you can give them a strategy. Tell your friend, please don't push me like that. Please don't touch me like that. That hurts. Right. I don't like that. And you can practice with them or help them in the moment to go over to the friend that they may be having a hard time with and say, tell them, I didn't like when you said I couldn't play with you, or I didn't like that you took that from me. Can I have a turn? Right. Scripts and language, and giving kids the language in the moment and the opportunity to practice is going to be the best.
And what you said about modeling, I never considered the way I advocate for myself with respect to my kids as being modeling behavior that they can use with their peers, right?
Yes,
because
absolutely.
that's I mean, I hadn't thought of it that way, but that's super helpful, because kids attack their parents all the time.
Absolutely. And I think saying it in a really moving away from the knee-jerk reaction of don't do that, but using self-advocacy
the same kind of language
that makes me uncomfortable, that hurts me, that didn't feel good, and then why don't we hug like this instead? and giving them, letting them know what your feelings are, and then what they can do that's different.
Got it.
So that's sort of the step-by-step process.
That's great. Third question. My 3-year-old has started to lie, mostly about minor things. How do I help him understand that lying is not okay, and how do I ensure that this doesn't continue into lies about more significant things?
So for 3-year-olds, for all people, everybody lies. That's just the truth, and that's the truth. That's not a lie. But it's again a very typical part of development.
Yeah.
When kids are under about 2.5, their connection between what's real and what's not real is really fuzzy.
Yeah.
And that has to do with memory and cognitive development. And so a lot of times those lies might not even be purposeful.
Right.
Like, this is the age when you're in that 2 to 3 zone of monsters and talking rainbows and all sorts of things. It's creativity. Yeah. And so it's hard to kind of gauge. When kids are about 3, they develop the ability to tell what they call first-year lies or primary lies. And those are self-serving, where they can say, no, I didn't do that. Right. My imaginary friend did it, or, the dog did it. And I think, the first step is understanding that it's normal and it's typical, and not to sort of have this reaction of,
oh my God, my kid's a liar.
My kid's a liar. Like, what does this mean? Knowing that it's really normal. And in fact, one of the things that I think can help parents with that is there's a really cool thing happening in development when children are able to lie. And that means that they can perspective take. So it's developing a concept that psychologists call theory of mind. And it's the ability to understand that somebody sees something differently than you do. Right. And so, for example, there's something called the false belief test that they give to kids. And it's one of the ones that they do is they show a box of crayons and they say to a child, what do you think is in this box? Yeah. And the child says, crayons. And then you open the box and you show them that there's candles in it. So you say, oh, there's candles in it. If you say to a 2-year-old, what did you think was in this box? They'll say candles. Yeah. If you pull out, most 2-year-olds, if you pull out a Snoopy doll, you say Snoopy was sleeping while we were talking, so he doesn't know what we talked about. Yeah. And you bring Snoopy up and you say, what do you think Snoopy thinks is in this box? Yeah. A 2-year-old will say candles. Because they don't know that Snoopy doesn't know what they know. Right. And so the ability to lie actually means that they're starting to understand that Mom wasn't in the room when I broke this. Right. She doesn't know what I know, which is that I broke this vase or whatever. And so that same concept, theory of mind, is what develops empathy, is what allows you to understand somebody feels something different than me.
Right.
Somebody wants me to share this toy.
Right.
And so it's a really important developmental stage that kids go through. So when your kids lie, you can be like, that's great, they're developing theory of mind. So you can, I think, first of all, normalizing it.
Yeah.
In the moment, while you're congratulating yourself on the inside, you can, I think the most important thing is not to overemphasize the lying. So rather than getting in a power struggle with your child about it, you can sidestep it altogether. Like you can just say, oh, the vase is broken. Rather than saying, did you break this vase? Tell me you broke this vase. And getting in this power struggle about it, you can just comment on it and say, the vase is broken. And the child might own up to it rather than getting into this power struggle. I had a friend who had twins, and she would say that when she knew that one of them needed a diaper change, they would always blame the other because they didn't want to go through it. And, you know, she would ask them, like, which one of you has a dirty diaper? And they would blame each other. And I said, well, sidestep it completely and just figure it out. She was like, oh, they're lying. They're lying. They're saying it's the other person. Right. And so I think you can avoid the conflict altogether by just figuring it out rather than setting the kids up for a moment where they can lie. If they do, and you know, and you saw it, then I think you just say what happened. I saw you pull the cat's tail, and it wasn't your stuffed animal; it was you.
But what if that's a lie? What if I didn't see it?
If you didn't see it, but you know that something happened, then I think you deal with what happened. Yeah. Rather than getting into this battle about you have to tell me the truth.
Right.
I think if there's evidence, like if there's chocolate on their face,
that's exactly right. That was my example. I opened the garbage and there were like 3 wrappers in there. It definitely wasn't me. And I was like, oh, someone ate some chocolate.
Someone ate some chocolate. And so if they, oh, it was, my stuffed bunny, you can say, well, that's interesting. I don't think your stuffed bunny can eat chocolate. It was probably you. And then tell them next time, tell me if you want some chocolate. So give them the information that you want them to have. Okay. The other thing is I think we have to watch our reactions. So if we respond with a really big, angry response, that's baiting kids to lie. Right. So I think, and if kids do fess up and they do tell the truth, I think saying thanks for telling me that you did this, next time do this, that's going to sort of lay the groundwork and cultivate an environment where they'll feel comfortable. Right.
Yeah. Chocolates. Okay, 4th question. I have a 20-month-old who has a really hard time separating from me for any reason, even when we leave him with close relatives. How can we help him get more comfortable being apart? Separation anxiety.
Separation anxiety. So separation anxiety peaks 10 to 15 months. And usually at a year is when it's kind of at its apex. But it can linger until kids are about 3. And it's very normal. And part of that is that when you have, it's adaptive for kids to have a secure connection with their parent and look to their parent as the person that protects them, as the person that keeps them safe. And so when that security is not there, that does feel a little bit uncomfortable for a kid. And that's normal. I think, again, it's about, you can give sort of direct instruction and talking about this. Books are great. The Invisible String is a really cute one. Llama Llama, Mrs. Mama is a really good one. And helping your child understand that feeling of missing you is really normal and totally understandable, but also that you'll come back. If you're struggling with a child that this is a particular challenge for them, I think you can also play games. So there's like higher level peekaboo. So goodbye is kind of like a trigger for some kids. So you can say goodbye and hide behind a chair and then come out and say I'm back. And so you're sort of introducing this routine. Right. You can also leave the room and give them sort of that short practice, so to speak, of saying, Mommy's going to go in the kitchen and get a drink of water. I'll be right back. And then they know that you come back. Right.
But usually when you're actually leaving, it's with someone else. And oftentimes it's that combination. It's almost like if you actually left them alone in the house, they would be better off than like you leaving them with a stranger, like a babysitter or a nanny or a relative.
I think sometimes too, parents are pulled to like try to do the sneak out.
Yeah.
Which isn't helpful for kids. Like the parent might be scared, the upsetness of the child when you leave. But really for the kid, that's kind of alarming because when they then realize you're gone, they're like, mom just disappeared. So having some sort of a ritual of saying goodbye is helpful.
Right.
And sometimes even having like a phrase that you use. Like I always say to my daughter, see you soon, raccoon. Like that's kind of our thing. Like having a phrase or a handshake or a little song can make a goodbye routine feel like something, okay, I know how to do this.
Keep it short.
This is something to keep it short. So that's really important. I think sometimes the separation is harder for the parents than it is for the kids. And just like kids look to their parents to figure out, am I safe? Is this an okay situation? If a parent is kind of lingering at a drop-off or they're returning multiple times to give hugs, that's signaling to the child that you're anxious, and the child's like, why are you nervous? Should I be nervous? Like, what's going on here?
And yay or nay on the hug, on the goodbye?
I think hugs are great.
Hugs are
but
good.
I think you got to keep it short. Not
gonna be like,
like you're gonna have so much fun. These are the things you're gonna do. I'm gonna come back.
Yeah.
And keep it very short, but definitely say goodbye. And a hug and a kiss is fine.
I find when I do the hug at the goodbye, it becomes like he doesn't let go. It's like it's even harder because like the physical proximity, and then it's like she's out the door.
Well, if they're really little, and you can sort of hand them off. Like physically hand them off. And they might do the reach, and that's it's really hard, but most kids recover pretty quickly. If you are leaving them with a sitter or somebody new, it's helpful to interact with that adult with the parent present before you leave.
Right.
So if it's a new babysitter, you might have the babysitter over for a play date where you're there also, and they can see you talking to that adult, being okay with them. This is mom's friend, and she thinks they're okay and cool to leave me with. So it's not new. Yeah.
I think that's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
This has been great. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.